Hello, everyone. I'm Alan Rule, and today I am doing a video refuting the work of the anonymous Eastern Orthodox blogger Ubi Petrus. Ubi Petrus is the gift that keeps on giving, let's be honest, And I've noticed, I kind of feel bad for the guy because I notice he has an allergy. He's allergic to primary sources. Now, I'm not allergic to primary sources, so I'm going to be putting the primary sources on the screen. What we're going to be responding to is his May 22nd video where he was doing a review of Eric Ibarra's debate with Father Patrick. And basically, he made some comments. I'm just going to have a 3.5 minute clip of the whole Stephen versus Saint Cyprian episode, Pope Stephen versus Saint Cyprian. And I'm going to be commenting. Of course, there's no primary sources on the screen. He vaguely alludes to some letters, but he doesn't actually quote them. So I'm going to be putting the primary sources on the screen so you guys can see it all for yourself. Let me just bring up the video here and we shall begin.
Stephen appealed to the...
Okay, wait. Okay.
In the 3rd century, Pope Stephen appealed to the Matthean text, situating Peter and his successors as the rock upon which the church is built, in order to legitimize his enforcement of the Roman policy on baptism in North Africa. The 5th century Vincent of Lérins, a saint cherished by both Catholics and Orthodox, corroborates that not only was Stephen correct in policy, but also in authoritative procedure over his interlocutors. That is from the 6th chapter of his Commonitorium.
The comments by Pope St. Stephen are known only via St. Firmilian.
That's true.
And even within that context, it is St. Stephen's boast. It is not so much about Petrine authority, but rather that Stephen has an apostolic throne, and it is therefore rightful when St. Cyprian, Bishop of Carthage, does not have an apostolic throne and is therefore wrong.
Okay, pause for a second. So he's saying that that Pope Stephen's argument is not he's got Petrine authority and those others don't. It's apostolic versus non-apostolic.
This goes back to the point about St. Irenaeus. In the mind of the early patristics, apostolic churches cannot falter, and so Stephen is not emphasizing Peter, but emphasizing that he possesses the authority that comes with an apostolic lineage. This is why, 30 years prior to the tone-deaf policy of Pope Victor at the end of the 2nd century, Pope Anicetus backed down on the topic of the Quartodecimans when confronted with the practice of another apostolic see in the person of St. Polycarp.
All right, let's pause there. So the claim is Pope Stephen was only claiming apostolic authority, not Petrine authority. And he's true that we only know the words of Cyprian through St. Firmilian. So we're going to put on Firmilian's comments, Epistle 74, St. Cyprian of Carthage, paragraph number 17. Okay. All right. It's right here. And in this respect, I am justly indignant at this so open and manifest folly of Stephen, that he who boasts of the place of his episcopate. Now, pause here. Is what's the boast going to be? Is it apostolic or Petrine? Let's continue. Quote, and contends that he holds the succession of Peter, on whom the foundations of the church were laid, should introduce many other rocks and establish new buildings of many churches, maintaining that there is baptism in them, blah, 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 blah. So what happened here is that he's claiming authority from being the successor of Peter, and there's a strong allusion to Matthew 16 because it talks about the foundations of the church. The church was built upon this rock. I will build my church. If you're building some, you need a foundation. And it talks about him introducing other rocks, supposedly, in the next sentence. So Matthew 16 is clearly in mind. And then Firmilian goes to talk against what he's doing. And then he says right here, Stephen, who announces that he holds by succession the throne of Peter, is stirred with no zeal against heretics when he concedes to them, blah, 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 blah. So he's obviously claiming Petrine authority. It's not merely, I'm in an apostolic see and you're not. It's Petrine authority, the authority of the Apostle Peter, aka papal authority, which Catholics have always understood. And now you do see that our friend Petrus, he kind of glossed over St. Vincent of Lérins. Let me just have some water. All right. Let's bring up Vincent of Lérins. Okay, because he kind of dodged it. Once upon a time, then, Agrippinus, bishop of Carthage, of venerable memory, held the doctrine, and he was the first who held it. So, in other words, this doctrine is an innovation, that baptism ought to be repeated, contrary to the divine canon, contrary to the rule of the universal church, contrary to the customs and institutions of our ancestors. This innovation drew after it such. Okay, so essentially, it's an innovation. I'm reading here. When all men protested against the novelty, and the priesthood everywhere, each as his zeal prompted him, opposed it, Pope Stephen of blessed memory, prelate of the Apostolic See, in conjunction indeed with his colleagues, but yet himself the foremost, withstood it, thinking it right. I doubt not, as he exceeded all others in the authority of his place. What is that place? Well, according to Firmilian, he was claiming the throne of Peter, chair of Peter, Petrine authority, succession, and we see that he held authority over all others, exceeded authority as he exceeded all others in the authority of his place. Yeah, this makes sense if you're a Catholic. It makes sense to Pope Stephen, to St. Vincent, to Vatican I. We've never had a problem with this. You know, it's when you try to introduce an anachronism in there. So, and also he was right on baptism. Let's take this off for a second, and we're going to put this back on the stream.
It should also be noted that St. Stephen's practices were eventually rejected by the church because even though it was later whitewashed, St. Cyprian, in his 72nd and 73rd epistles, quotes Pope St. Stephen as stating even Marcionites and various other Gnostic sects were not to be received by baptism, but only by laying on of hands. And this was repeatedly rejected by the church.
Okay, let's pause here for a second. So you have the Marcionite baptisms. Stephen said we should accept them. And Petrus says the church later on rejected that authority. It was repeatedly condemned. That's what he's like. Repeatedly was the word he used. Well, you saw in St. Vincent of Lérins that Pope Stephen was right on baptism. So that goes against what Petrus is saying. And now there's one authority that Petrus can quote. It's St. Basil of Caesarea that seems to back him up. Let me put St. Basil on the screen. Okay. And it says here, instances of heresy. This is letter 188. Instances of heresy are those of the Manichaeans, of the Valentinians, of the Marcionites, and of the Pepazines. For with them here comes in once their disagreement concerning the actual faith in God. So it seemed good to the ancient authorities to reject the baptism of heretics altogether, but to admit that of schismatics on the grounds that they still belong to the church. So you have a testimony that agrees with Petrus here. Now, you have two, keep in mind, he's like, it was repeatedly condemned. We have two contradictory testimonies, St. Vincent and St. Basil. But, so it's one against one. Now, a reasonable question would be, why pick Vincent over Basil? Which Petrus, which I do. Petrus picks the opposite. Because I'm going to break this tie. It's 1 versus 1. I'm going to break the tie, not with 1, not with 2, but with 215 church fathers at the Council of Trullo. And I should point out, Trullo is held in very high regard, especially amongst Orthodox. It's not an ecumenical council, but it's like one notch below. It's super authoritative. And so we're going to share... okay, Council of Trullo. Okay, Canon 95. Those who from heretics come over to orthodoxy, and to those number of those who should be saved, we receive according to the following order, and customs. Then it says Arians, Macedonians, and Novatians who call themselves Cathari, Aristari, and I don't know how to pronounce that names, and Apollinarians, we receive on their presentation of certificates and their anathemizing every heresy which does not hold as does the Holy Apostolic Church of God. Then first we anoint them with holy chrism on their foreheads, eyes, nostrils, mouth, ears, and we seal them, we say, the seal of the gift of the Holy Spirit. But concerning the Paulinists, so it's going on to a new category now, it has been determined by the Catholic Church that they shall by all means be rebaptized. The Eunomians also, who baptize with one immersion, and the Montanists, who here are called Phrygians, and the Sabellians, who consider the Son the same as the Father, and are guilty in certain other grave matters, and all the other heresies, for there are many heretics here, especially those who come from the region of the Galatians. All of their number who are desirous to come into the Orthodox faith, we receive as Gentiles. And on the first day we make them Christians, on the second catechumens, on the third day we exorcise them, at the same time also breathing thrice upon their faces and ears, and thus we initiate them, and we make them spend time in church and hear the scriptures, and then we baptize them. So it gives a bunch of groups that were come into the church through baptism. Now it's going to talk about a new group. And the Manichaeans and the Valentinians and the Marcionites, that's the key group here, and all the similar heresies must give certificates and anathematize each his own heresy, and also Nestorius, Eutites, Dioscorus, Severus, and all the other chiefs of such heresies, and those who think with them, and all the aforesaid heresies, so they become partakers of the Holy Communion. Nothing about rebaptism on this, and this includes the Marcionites. 215 bishops break the tie of 1 versus 1. So Petrus is like, they're repeatedly condemned. You have one guy. I have 215 bishops saying you're wrong. Who are you going to pick? 1 or 215? At Trullo, a very respected council in the Orthodox Church. I guess if you're Petrus, you're going to go with the 1. I'm going to go with the 215. Now, there is here. Let's get back to the video.
Concerning the event with Pope Victor in Asia, the late Orthodox Archbishop and theologian Stylianus Harkianakis states the following, quote, "It was at this point that the differentiation between the Catholic Church of the West and that of the East began," close quote. That's from his Infallibility of the Church in Orthodox Theology, page 146. Orthodox theologian Father Laurent Kleinenberg, in his book, His Broken Body, states the following, quote, "One could therefore argue that the Great Schism started with Victor, continued with Stephen, and remained underground until the 9th century," close quote. That's page 155. Clearly, therefore, Victor and Stephen, both saints in Catholicism and Orthodoxy, gave the impression of a primacy of universal jurisdiction.
But here, Mr. Ibarra is misunderstanding the words of these two writers, neither of whom are theologians per the Orthodox understanding of the term.
Oh.
They are not saying that anything even approaching Vatican I was present in the above described events. They are just indicating that a growing intolerance for a plurality of practices, the type of behavior that led to the schism, was beginning to show itself very early on, and that is correct.
Now you're about to hear one of the worst arguments I've ever heard. One of the single worst arguments that the worst Protestant critics of the papacy don't even make. The worst Protestant critic, like this is among Jack Chick type critiques of the papacy. You're about to hear it now. Get ready to hear the worst argument you've ever heard.
It was a carryover from pagan Rome that the inhabitants of Rome expected others to act, think, eat, drink, and walk like they did.
It was a carryover from pagan Rome. Yeah, Pope Stephen, that's what he was doing. It's like, well, you know, and by the way, it's not like a carryover because Rome was not Christian then. Rome was pagan then. Let's hear that again.
Was beginning to show itself very early on, and that is correct. It was a carryover from pagan Rome that the inhabitants of Rome expected others to act, think, eat, drink, and walk like they did.
No, that's false. It's not a carryover from pagan Rome. Now, it's true in the Catholic world, in the Christian faith, things are, the faith can be practiced differently from region to region. For example, in Poland, you got the Roman Rite. If you go to Ukraine, you got the Byzantine Rite. If you go to Iraq, they're Chaldeans. They have their own rite, way of doing things. But the doctrine has to be the same. And when Stephen condemned Cyprian, it was because Cyprian was holding a heretical view. He was holding heresy. Now, although certain local customs can be held in different regions, that's true. But heresy can be held nowhere. It has to be extinguished. It's not allowed anywhere on planet Earth or in the entire universe, because heresy is heresy. And that's what it is. It's not a carryover from pagan Rome. And I got to be honest here. I did a couple months ago, John Fisher 2.0 and I did a 2.5 hour response to Dr. Gavin Ortland's 5 critiques of the papacy. And this was one of them. And he does a better job of critiquing the papacy with this episode than Petrus does. Of course, we still shredded him because facts are facts. But yeah, so he even does a better job. And he doesn't even bring up this pagan Rome stuff. And I want to make an appeal to the people that give money to Ubi Petrus via Patreon, because he's a Patreon. If you're, like, I've shown you the primary sources, and it contradicts Petrus. Petrus didn't quote any primary sources in that video. So if you're a patron of his and you give him $5, $10, $20, or $30 a month, I recommend, I'm going to make a suggestion, you stop giving him that money and you use that money to buy church fathers and read them. That's the suggestion I'm going to make. It's just a suggestion. It's up to you. Or you can keep giving money to Petrus, but it's up to you. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. More refutations coming on this channel, and I'm also going to do more with Elijah Yassi. Thank you for your time, and God bless.